Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to the Great Movie Ride podcast. I am your host, Gaston, with my co host, Jerryofdom, and today we are joined by our guest star, Cake Master, Darnel, Danny D, whatever else you want to call him. I'm sure I've called him all those things. Dano,
Danny boy,
Dan, Danny Boy, at multiple points in the channel's history,
muted.
and OBS on our visual, but that's okay. Um,
I've been called. There we go. Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. There we go. We got in the title Danny DeVito. There we go. Um,
He's short, so it works out.
so let's start with a disclaimer. I've said on a live stream in the previous podcast as well that this podcast would be Denis Villeneuve's Dune, but we had two people who wanted to be a part of it who are very bad at getting back to me. You know who you are. Message me back. So instead, we're switching the order slightly, and today we're doing Sword Art Online Progressive Aria of a Starless Night, the new Sword Art Online movie that came out, and then next time we'll be doing whether they show up or not. Seriously, they'll message me. So, coming off of doing pretty much exclusively Marvel movies, we're going to an anime movie now that just came out this past year. As pretty much everybody who's paid attention to the channel knows, I'm a very big fan of Sword Art Online. Klein is my default player model on Gmod until Gaston comes out. So when the movie got announced, I guess I'll start with my previewing thoughts. I usually don't go first, but I was super excited. When I saw what was being adapted, I got even more excited because Aincrad, the first arc in Sword Art Online, that's the arc that everybody pretty much saw and everybody loved. Um, and so the basic story of what it is was already adapted previously into the anime, but it was really short. And I read the source material it was based off of, and it was even better than what happened in the anime. So when the movie was announced, I was super excited to see the whole thing. And the only thing that stopped this from being probably the Sword Art Online event of the entire franchise for me is my favorite character, the aforementioned Klein, is not in the story much, so I knew he wouldn't have a big role. But I was super excited. Let's turn it over to Nick. What was your previewing thoughts?
Um, well, Sword Art Online. I didn't know what to expect too much because I've only seen the first two seasons, and you know, in my opinion, they're not my favorite, but they are enjoyable to watch. Um, I watch a lot of anime, so this is just one of the lower ends for me. But I thought, hey, they've got good animation in the season 3 and 4, and anime movies have good animation, so I was excited to see that.
Daniel?
Um, I was first shown this by someone named Gaston, and the first thing I saw was the boss and the remake they did on him, and that was pretty much the one thing that brought my attention to the movie.
Yeah. Buff Ilfang, as we called him. And more on him a little bit later. So let's transition into the brief plot sum up. This is, as I mentioned, a better adaptation of Aria of a Starless Night, which was episode 2 of season 1 of the anime. Basics of the story is this kind of basis of all Sword Art Online, but it applies to this as well. 10,000 players are trapped in a full dive VR MMORPG called Sword Art Online. Full dive just being that it's essentially all your senses are activated. Yeah, VR with all your senses involved: feel, taste, scent, everything. Um, and with the threat of if they die in the game, they die in real life. And this story adapts how they defeat the floor 1 boss, the entire first floor story, with a slight twist that whereas the anime is told from Kirito's perspective, this story is told from Asana's perspective, along with an original character created for the movie who's not from the source material, named Mito. Boom. There's your brief sum up of what this movie is. So let's talk characters. And start with the lead character, Asuna. who was voiced by, in the English dub, Sharame Lei. Asuna, female protagonist of Sword Art Online, Kirito's love interest. In the film, we get to see what Asuna's life was like before being trapped in the game, as well as what she was doing in Minecraft before she met Kirito, and Lei reprises her role as Asuna from the anime and the previous film. Ordinal scale. Nick, why don't you start with Asuna?
Like, gonna not sound weird just talking about her.
That's why I decided to have you go first so I could damage control if need be.
Oh boy. She's a great character. In the anime and all that, there isn't this depth to her, particularly in the beginning. It just feels like a regular female protagonist in an anime that are just there. So when they get hurt, the protagonist gets a power boost. You know. But in this, they made her feel more of an actual person in it, and it wasn't just this bland female character that's hot. They managed to change it up so that it feels better.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is the I agree that this is the best Austin has ever been, in my opinion. She was always a good character, but when she's given like actual attention away from Kirito, you get to see her as a full character. The voice performance was great. I especially liked the performance towards the beginning of the third act when she interacts with Kirito in a dungeon as she's exhausted. Just the amount of emotion and exhaustion she put into it. Voice work can be done super well, that it really draws you in. And yeah, Asuna was my favorite character in the movie. She was done so very well. So let's talk about Mito, who I'm gonna butcher these names. So Mito plays as a male avatar until she is turned into, with the mirror effect, which makes everyone look like the real life self, where she's turned into a girl. So the male avatar was voiced by Anaris Quinones. Maybe said that right. And her actual voice for the majority of the film was voiced by Kaylee McKee. So as I mentioned before, Mito is an original character created just for this movie, not source material, not the anime. She is Asuna's friend in the real world, and also a beta tester of Sword Art Online like Kirito was, who gets trapped inside. Yeah, that's her background. I'll start with Mito. She fits into the story fairly well, especially considering she wasn't a part of the story before. And the reason why she did is because the story focused on things we hadn't seen. It was all Asuna's POV instead of Kirito's. There was one thing they did with her that I wasn't a fan of, but I'll talk about that later. So, actually, sorry, I got this backwards. I should have read my notes more carefully before saying which one played which. So her male avatar that she used in the beta test and before being turned back to a girl was voiced by Kaylee McKee. It was actually a woman doing the male avatar's voice. And Anaris Quinones did the main voice of Mito. Her performance was good. There was good chemistry between Asuna and Mito thanks to both actresses' excellent voice work. Nick.
I really enjoyed her. It was a surprise because, as you said, it's an anime original, and you never know what to expect by those because there is no source material to look at. There is nothing else to see or feel that you might be getting. So it's a totally new perspective, and she was done well. I enjoyed her character in it. I liked how her weapon was a scythe. It's one of my favorite types of weapons.
That was pretty cool.
she was just presented well, and she was a nerd, and it was cool. It's like female nerd, man. And yeah, she was a good character. Glad what they did with her in it.
So let's talk about Kirito, who is the main protagonist of Sword Art Online, Asuna's love interest. But in this film, he is decidedly a secondary character. He doesn't even have any dialogue until about halfway through the film, and he's only ever used sparingly until like the climax of Act 3. Um, would you like to start with Kirito?
Sure. This was honestly my favorite Kirito I've seen, just because of the way he acts, and he doesn't seem like this total, Chad that can just talk to any woman he walks up to. He talks to Asuna, and he doesn't even look at her because it's just this shy, awkward guy, and it was hilarious, and it was cool seeing him how he was more before turning into the Black Swordsman that
Yep.
he's called? Yeah, into that. And you see more of him just more chill and shy and nervous and just that's how he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people will complain that he isn't in it enough because there's a lot of people who only like Sword Art Online because of Kirito. And then alternatively, he's also one of the things that a lot of people have mentioned that they don't like. So alternatively, there could be a lot to say that there's too much Kirito in the movie. But I think they handled him perfectly because he's not the main character. So I don't think there was like not enough of him, but you can't really tell the story without him at the same time. And like we've seen his version of events in the anime, and even more so in the book. I don't know if I actually said who plays him, but Bryce Papenbrook returns to voice Kirito, and he delivers another good performance. But the one that really stuck out to me was his uh, beater speech at the end of the film, right down to the unhinged laughter. So much better than the version from the anime. Like, oh, that was a good moment.
It's been a while since I've seen that, but it did feel more like this guy is totally acting it up and is trying to seem like this bro.
Because it's such a like because the anime episode is 22 minutes to adapt the entire book. It's so short. Because the book, for those of you who don't know, Sword Art Online Progressive Volume 1, it starts when Kirito and Asuna meet in the dungeon. That's the start of the book. So they took the entire book and tried to shove it into 22 minutes in the anime. And the movie handles this much better.
And they didn't in the anime. They didn't have them meet each other in the dungeon. It was at that meeting.
Yeah, they didn't include the dungeon scene at all. um, which is a pretty important scene because Asuna's lines there is something that really resonates with the show. Like, this, it's something like it doesn't matter how hard you fight, you're just choosing when and where to die. It's a powerful line when given their situation. You got anything to add for Kirito there, Danny boy?
I liked how he wasn't just the main character again, and they changed things up. And like Nick said, how he was shy. And the funny part was when he was struggling to put his sword back in his, he was just so nervous.
It's like me talking to a female.
So let's talk about Diavel, who, while I couldn't find any direct confirmation as to who voiced him in the English dub, it sounded like the same voice actor from the anime, so unless proven otherwise, I put Sean Chiplock as his actor. He's a supporting character and the leader of the first floor boss raid. He is portrayed as a noble and chivalrous individual who all the players rally behind. Um, so, uh, time for my mild rant that will be explored upon when we get into heavy spoilers. But Diavel is given a bit more to do in the movie because there's more time. But it's really only in the planning meeting that he is given more to do. And they still have yet to correctly adapt Diavel. They've taken 2 shots at this story, and they still haven't gotten across the type of character Diavel is supposed to be. But more on that in the heavy spoilers. Nick?
Uh, well, you know, you've explained the character a bit more to me, and there's been different ways that we've learned about the character. So it's been more interesting to see how he's played in this. And again, as you said, it's not the same as it should be, but it still gives a good hero message from what he is. He's presented as someone who's a good guy, and they do it well, even if that's not how he originally is.
That's a fair point. It is. He has that charisma about him. So let's talk about Kibo. Kibo is voiced by Derek Stephen Prince. He's a member of the First Floor Boss Raid and a very loud hater of the beta testers, blaming them for all the people who have died. He is
He's a
smarmy.
racist.
Yeah. He is smarmy, hostile, and constantly shouting. Um, you want to start with Kibo?
Yeah, sure. Like, again, he's annoying. Everyone kind of hates him just because he's that loud, obnoxious. I hate everything because all of you kill everyone. And then, we get, oh, what's his name? Um, Blacksmith guy.
Agil.
Egil. And he comes up again, just like the anime, and shuts him up. And it is still hilarious to watch.
Yep, yep. Can I say something? And there's like a foot height difference between the two.
He just kind of looks down at him like, we got this book. Yeah. He's like, wow.
um,
Who would have thought
yeah, exactly. You're not supposed to like Kipo. So as far as that goes, absolute
it well.
absolute props to the voice actor. He nailed it. You're not supposed to like him, and you don't. He's my least favorite character in the film because he's supposed to be. They nailed the performance of Kibo.
He was my favorite character.
Oof. Well, he's shaking his head at me, so
My favorite dumb character.
So speaking of Agil, let's talk about Agil. Voiced once again by Patrick Seitz, an ally of Kirito who's the level-headed, kind-hearted, but very strong warrior. In this film, we get to see how he met Austin and Kirito once again, same role he had in the anime. Patrick Seitz returned to voice Agil, and as always nails the big booming voice, but adds in like a ton of charm flowing out of it that you love the character. He's one of those guys that make SAO so good. His role is reduced from the anime and the light novel in this film, and I'm going to complain about that later. But he is the only supporting ally from the anime to have more than just a brief cameo, so it was awesome to see him again.
Yeah. I enjoyed his one.
Anything to add?
There's not a lot to add because he had a smaller role. It's not like the other movies we've been reviewing where it's all these huge characters.
Yeah.
It's a lot of minor characters, and there's like one or two people that are focused on.
Yeah. We only have a couple more to talk about. This one I just wanted to include because this is the first time we've seen the character. He's been mentioned a lot. His name is Koichiro Yuki, who is Asuna's brother. The one who it's revealed in the books and the anime that he is the one who bought the nerve gear in SAO. He was way on a business trip, so Asuna tried it out and got trapped in the game.
He's a Chad, not gonna lie.
It's voiced by Ryan Colt Levy. It's the first time he was seen. And for such an important character, because he is the reason that Asuna is in the game, it's Asuna's brother. It was the first time he was seen, so I just wanted to mention him.
It was interesting to see, especially with how the family works. He was probably the favorite member of the family out of all of them, other than Asuna.
Yeah, because like the dad is oblivious, and the mom, if you've seen the anime, you know the mom's a bit of a piece of work.
You're like,
But yeah, Koichiro is just a pretty chill guy. He reminds me a lot of my oldest brother. I was just like, yeah, pretty chill guy. So let's talk about Akihiko Kayaba, voiced by David W. Collins, returning from the Alicization seasons to voice him.
so it's a different voice actor than season 1?
Yes, but the same one for him in season 3 and 4. Kayaba is the creator of Sword Art Online and the Nerve Gear, and the one responsible for trapping people. He is technically the main villain of the Aincrad arc. And what was kind of cool is, even though he has virtually the exact same lines as he does in episode 1 of the anime, they use the new voice actor to redub him. And the look. Adding smoke billowing out from under the hood, absolutely incredible. That was so good.
They really emphasize more on his entrance because in the anime he more or less just kind of shows up. Like it's showing how he shows up, but it's not like
that.
Drawn out. It was like drawn out, but in a good way, where you're like building up the suspense, and then he starts talking, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
You've seen it 100 times if you've rewatched it, and it's just like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening.
Kayaba is the greatest villain that Sword Art Online has had, and they've had many villains. So it's always exciting to see Kayaba again, even if it is just retreading old ground. And this is an interesting note. They add in the line of this may be a game, but it isn't something you play. That line is the tagline for the series in the books, like the whole franchise, but it had never been said by a character, not even in the books until that movie. So I was kind of like, I know that line. It's the Leonardo DiCaprio meme just pointing. I know that line. And let's talk about finally a character without a voice actor, but I want to mention it anyway. Let's talk about Ilfang, the Cobalt Lord. Buff Ilfang! Though not technically a character, he has no personality to speak of. I wanted to include him. He went through a significant redesign. If you've seen the anime or even the illustrations from the book, he's this fat, big character, and in the movie they made him absolutely ripped. Hence why we call him Buff Ilfang. Some people probably won't like the redesign, but I personally love it. I think he looks so much more terrifying.
Ricky went to the gym before they showed up.
Yeah, exactly. The funny part is according to the book, um, the picture source material for Ilfang that was with the book is not what the book describes. The anime is based off the image, and the progressive one is even farther away, so none of them actually look the same. None of them are consistent. So it's pretty much just pick your favorite one, and that's your Ilfang.
Build a multiverse with all these different Ilfangs.
All the Ilfangs. It's Sword Art Online No Way Home. Actually, that's kind of the plot of Sword Art Online, but different context. Anything you want to add about Ilfang there, Dan? I know you were excited for Buff Ilfang.
Yeah. What's that move he did on Diavel?
Horizontal square.
Is that like his ultimate move?
Yeah, it was a 4-hit combo that the boss used on the poor guy. He never saw it coming.
Yeah, that was about the best thing he did.
It was pretty cool. So let's talk about the effects and the cinematography. With an animated film, this is more just the animation in general, but also cinematography applies as like what they chose to show and like the shot choices. It still applies. I thought the effects were pretty great. It's an anime film, so there's not like because the whole medium is animation, there's nothing that feels out of place. It's not like when you see bad CGI in a live action film that stands out.
The anime has CGI in it, and you're like, oh my god.
Fair. But I think it is one of the best looks, especially for Aincrad itself, because going from the 2012 animation to the movie animation of Aincrad, just the setting itself. We already mentioned the smoke billowing out of Kayaba. That was beautiful. And I just want to mention all the sunlight shots, especially when they're walking to the first floor labyrinth. The sun getting through the trees, that was gorgeous. Anything you wish to add, say?
I think from the final fight, I was expecting a little bit more just because it was an anime movie. So I was a little bit let down on that. Because I've watched a lot more animes than you have. And when
Yeah,
you
that's
see a
true.
lot of fights, you can judge different fights differently. And yes, it had that nice quality of a new like anime style. Because like you look at an older one, it's a lot different style than it is now. But it still felt a little too solid at times because in some fights you'll see it's a lot more fluid and they look like they're always moving.
Mm.
And so it could have been done a bit better, but otherwise it was still a really good fight. It's better than some other ones I've seen, and it had good animation in it.
Yeah. That's my nitpick too, actually, is the Sword Art Online's best animated fight should have been that fight with Ilfang. Because it was a movie, it was the most recent thing. It should have been this spectacle. But it doesn't even top two of the fights from the previous film, Ordinal Scale, let alone the most gorgeous animation I've ever seen, Bercoli versus Emperor Vecta in War of the Underworld, season 4 of Sword Art Online. That fight
Well,
is gorgeous.
also seen like the clips of some of the like season 4 fights, and like the one where Kirito is fighting I don't know who because I haven't seen it, but I watched that fight and it is a beautifully animated fight. It's just spectacular. So
I think I know
when you
exactly what
mentioned
you're
how
talking
other
about.
ones are spectacular, it gets me excited to see season 4 because you watch a lot of animes nowadays and it is just like, oh, they're moving so just frame by frame, like very like skippity kind of
Mm.
instead of fluid, and it's just like it's nice to see when something is fluidly moving and it's like, oh my goodness, my ass.
Yeah. Just to mildly trash on one of my brother's favorite animes, the Seven Deadly Sins. It was supposed to have a huge fight between his favorite character and another character. It's supposed to be this big thing, and it was
It
one of
was
the
the
worst
main
animated
character,
things I've seen.
it is a meme in the anime community. Everyone is like, okay, if we are to judge any fight that is the lowest, it is anything in Seven Deadly Sins after season 2. And yeah, like no offense to Seven Deadly Sins, but it is bad.
I think even the Seven Deadly Sins fans think it's bad. Though
Oh yeah,
I seem to see
most of
that
them
a
are like,
lot.
what did we see? People have made fan animations to make it better.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Cinematography. It's hard to talk about in an animated film. Uh, I like the tracking shot of Asana rushing Fang to help Kirito. I thought that was a very cool shot. But like, there wasn't a moment where I was like, I wish we were seeing something else, except for when all the players are talking, and it's like, what is Fang doing right now? It's like Thanos watching all the heroes arrive in Endgame and just not moving. Like, what is Fang doing while they're talking? He's just standing there.
And he's a boss too, so he doesn't have a brain. He should just be going.
I know, he should just be slaughtering people. So let's talk about the writing and score. So the writing wasn't anything special. It was Sword Art Online. It wasn't terrible, but it was serviceable. There's some funny lines, funny moments. Talk about Kirito's awkwardness in his first scene. That was very good. But
And that other scene when they're in the cabin and then he like spits out his name.
that was good too. Like there was some funny moments, but the writing wasn't anything spectacular.
Sword Art Online isn't known for having this amazing writing to it in the first 2 seasons, particularly.
It's actually one of the things that people like to hate on the most about it is the writing.
I think if season like the second half of season 1 didn't go the way it kind of went, that ending, I think people wouldn't judge it so hard.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of that bit, and you're like,
yeah.
What am I watching?
Like, everybody loved the Aincrad arc. That's why it was so popular. But the Fairy Dance arc kind of trips. There's only one episode in Fairy Dance that I actually can say I really like.
I've actually, like, second half, season 1, and then season 2 are everyone's usually least favorite. But I've heard, like, amazing things about season 3 and 4, and people that hate Sword Art Online are even like, season 3 and 4 are good.
Oh, yeah. War of the Underworld is incredible. It would. I knew it would take a lot to top Aincrad, and War of the Underworld does. Season 4 is better than Aincrad. It is really good, with some really great characters and some real emotional punches. Are like, oh my gosh. The score was epic. Sword Art Online score always is. They mix in new pieces with old favorites from the anime. You've got like these nostalgic hits and these new things. Absolute highlight for the score for me, right at the start of the film when it's showing the ending of the beta test and Kirito runs past Mito, and his theme blares out. And then also the classic Town of Beginnings music when the raid party is celebrating the night before the boss raid. That was a nice nostalgia hit. It's kind of like, ah, yes. Anything you wish to add about score?
I actually there's like every anime I've watched, unless they're like the big ones, they've got pretty basic scores. But Sword Art is one of those big ones that's like pretty big, and so that score is noticeable. And it starts to get mixed in with the smaller ones because they're like, oh, let's just steal this other music and they just compile it. It's nothing special. But this one again was done well and it has good score. There's nothing that particularly that I can remember that I just went, oh, because it's been a while since I've seen it. But it was still like it was a good score.
Okay, so let's head to the heavy spoilers. This is going to be our shortest podcast yet, which is great. Because we're a little late recording this, so this will work out. Because
2 hours.
I feel like Dune might be one of our longest. There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot to talk about with Dune. Warning! Heavy spoilers time. Chunk by chunk, here we go. Movie opens with a male beta tester running through a dungeon as the beta of Sword Art Online is about to close. He is stunned by a boss mob before a mysterious black figure, Kirito, defeats the boss and makes it to the next floor. The beta ends just before the male tester reaches said new floor. Then cuts to the real world where we see Asuna Yuki seeing an advertisement for Sword Art Online coming soon. And that's like the first 5 minutes of the movie right there. Boom. In 30 seconds.
Didn't mind it. Like
That's a great way to start the film.
It was actually a good fight scene, that little bit in the beginning. That's you're like, oh wow, things. It just throws you straight in there, so it gets your attention.
Yeah.
If it had opened with Asuna seeing the ad for Sword Art, it would have been like,
yeah,
kind of boring already. It's that first 5 minutes that's most important. That you
draws you
get their attention, you know. And they did it.
Yeah, it was great way to get us into the story, and then give us the exposition that follows in our second chunk. We are then introduced to the Yuki family, including Asuna's kind-hearted father, strict mother, and slacker brother. We also see Asuna's friendship with fellow student Misumi, Mito, who has the top marks in their class. While Asuna strictly follows the academic path her mother has laid out for her, see Season 2's third arc for more on that. Misumi is more laid back and a hardcore gamer. She introduces Asuna to games, and though Asuna is bad at them, they have fun playing them together. It looks like they were playing a Street Fighter knockoff. Misumi attempts to convince Asuna. Yeah, exactly. Attempts to convince Asuna to join her for the launch of Sword Art Online, but she refuses. And that gets us. That's our second chunk. We get to learn a bit about Asuna's life. We got to see her brother.
I want to punch that mom straight in the face. It's one of those characters. Every anime that has an evil parent, it's usually the mom. And you always just want to beat the crap out of that mom. But like they presented the opening well. Like it brought us more tight down instead of having that big opening fight where it got your attention. Then it can pull you down a bit and get you more like, this is where we're presenting things, and it's got to start from something. You know, you're always gonna get that less like action packed and all that, but you don't always need that.
That's what Act 1 is. You gotta set up the rest of the story, and because the story relies so heavily on Asuna and Mito's relationship, the take a step back to really analyze that friendship, that was definitely the right call.
Oh yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
It's a lot different for me because there's certain people that only watch anime that are like action-packed animes or animes that are more action. But I watched a variety of different ones. So like an opening like that, it was still interesting to me. I like when you get to dive into someone's normal life. I find it interesting.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will be surprised that it's about 20 minutes before they actually get into Sword Art Online. Yeah. I was kind of surprised at that.
I didn't mind it though.
No, I because so much, like I said, rests on that relationship. Taking that first act to really set up that friendship without the threat of death looming over them was, I think, the right call. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to complain that it's all, it's badly paced and whatnot. But the community at large, the movie had a 90-some-odd% approval rate on Rotten Tomatoes and was one of the top grossing films in Japan, so obviously people enjoyed said movie. Let's look at our transition from Act 1 to Act 2 here. On the launch day of Sword Art Online, Asuna goes to see her brother off, but he has already left for his business trip to America. Asuna sees her brother's nerve gear and the physical copy of Sword Art Online and decides to meet up with Misumi in-game. Upon entering the game with Asuna's designing her avatar after herself, she encounters the male beta tester from the opening, who is revealed to be Misumi using the username Mito. No surprise there, I'm sure everybody saw that coming. They spend the day together, and Mito shows Asuna all the cool things about the game. At 5 p.m., when Asuna goes to log out, she finds the logout button is missing. Shocking! They are teleported to the main square where the game's creator, Akihiko Kayaba, was smoke billowing on it. So I'm going to see how many times I can get billowing in this podcast, just billowing in general.
We'll have a counter for it.
Exactly. He appears and tells the players the true nature of Sword Art Online. They are trapped inside until they can clear the game, and if they die in the game, they die in real life. My boy Klein makes a cameo here, along with Silica and Lisbeth. And they also all have dialogue except for Elizabeth as well. Klein, it's the exact same line from the anime. I don't think they did a new take of it, but my boy Klein at least got a line in there before he was quickly tossed aside in true Sword Art Online fashion, ignoring the best character. That might be controversial. Mito grabs Asta and runs out of the town, Mito knowing that they need to get a jump on the others like Kirito did in the anime, except being an actual friend to take Asuna with her instead of just ditching Klein, which would have made Sword Art Online so much more interesting if Klein were there. Asuna is attacked by a dire wolf and nearly dies. You could say her situation was dire. But Mito saves her. Asuna resigns herself to death. Mito promises that she won't let anything happen to her, and they form a party, and that is their first day in Minecraft.
Forming a party. It's like a first day in Ark, where you're running around with your stick, and then a dire wolf jumps you, and you're like, oh my god!
Their situation was dire. What can you say?
Exactly.
That wolf just came billowing out of the grass.
He was prying for. So if he had a physical copy and Nerf Gear is all mentally, I wonder how that worked. But other than that,
yeah, where would you plug it in? Like Klein had a physical copy as well, but it's like where does the disc go?
you instead of like when you.
Oh, maybe it's a cartridge.
Like the 3DS.
Yeah, just in the helmet. Maybe. Who knows?
I still think it's funny that when she put it on, she is standing straight up.
I know, she like totally.
Like she should have just went boom, and the Nerf Gear should have broke, and
she'd be dead.
Exactly. But it was interesting, and it got you intrigued, and it again that same opening in the first one that got your attention. Oh, no one could leave. You die in the game, you die in real life, even though real life you can die in real life. I'm messing with you. But it's interesting, and it gives you that same old vibe you got when you first watched the show.
Yeah. That's something that this movie does very well, is the reason why Aincrad is so well loved is the premise, and it doesn't change the premise. It goes back to its roots, and it does it well. So let's talk about our Act 2 excitement. 2 weeks later, after an awesome grinding montage of facing down monsters, which was admittedly pretty sick, the pair are in a dungeon where they see an unfortunate party all get killed, which deeply affects Asuna. I have a little note there that why didn't that affect Mito? Because up to that point, they characterized her as different from Kirito, and being like, oh, I must do the best for myself. But then she's just like, oh, well, they're dead. And it's like, is that the message you wanted to give there with her?
Joins in its first killing.
Yeah, laughing coffin. The next day, the pair are out hunting plant monsters called Nepenthes, which Nicholas knows very well. Though there are many, Asuna is doing a fine job handling herself with Mito's guidance of not attacking a Nepenthes with a fruit on its top. When a rare monster appears, Mito leaves Asuna to go catch it. She succeeds and returns in time to see Asuna accidentally kill the Nepenthes with the fruit, which summons an insane amount of the killer plants. Mito falls off a cliff, but survives, and is stuck fighting Nepenthes that she can't get back up to Asuna. Just as Asuna takes out the final Nepenthes, the monster known as a giant anthrosaur, and I consider myself a Sword Art Online expert, I had never heard or seen that thing before, especially on floor 1. Pretty much, emerges from the ground and starts trying to eat the already critically injured Asuna. Mito panics and can't stand to watch Asuna's HP gauge disappear, so she disbands the party like an a-hole and runs away, while Asuna sees that she's been abandoned by her only friend. A swordsman arrives, Kirito, and kills the massive beast, saving Asuna. Kirito should have been Klein, though he will not be named on screen until the very end of the film, and Asuna have a very funny and awkward exchange before they separate. Asuna falls into despair for 2 weeks before resolving to fight until she dies. So let me just correct something I misspoke there. The giant Anthrothorpe billowed from the ground and Kirito billowed onto the sea. That is pretty much the rest of Act 2 is this incredible action set piece.
It was an interesting one that I don't think I was expecting, to be honest, because it's like this movie only character, so you're probably expecting her to just die.
Mm-hmm. Especially when she fell off the cliff.
She was still alive, and you're like, oh, she didn't die, okay. And then it continues on, you know. Then she runs away, and you're like, you're an idiot. Why'd you run away?
You're like the worst friend ever.
What are you? And it just, come on. Well, if I knew my friend was gonna die, I'd stay there till they died, you know, out of respect, you know.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel about Asuna there, Mito. It sets up their final interaction in the movie well as well.
Yeah, though I feel like Asuna should have just killed her. Doesn't though, sadly. But it was a good fight and all that. Like, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was good. It was a good sequence. And then, again, Kirito being that antisocial guy. It's hilarious.
Antisocial gamer.
They need it more in the anime. Like, come on, give it to us.
So as we transition from Act 2 to Act 3 here, this transitional point, we see that Asuna enters the first floor dungeon alone and fights with all her might. When Kirito finds her, she has already been going non-stop for 4 days. Kirito doesn't recognize her as she now wears a disguise. She collapses and Kirito removes her from the dungeon. He invites her to a boss raid meeting happening in the nearby town. At the meeting, we meet Diavel, who is a popular player who people rally behind. He and his party had just found the boss room that morning. Kibo speaks up denouncing beta testers, blaming them for the 2,000 people who already died in the game. By the way, 2,000 people had already died at this point. This is about a month into the game. But Egil defends the beta tester, showing the free guidebook a beta tester had given out to all players. With Kibo's silence, Diavel reports on the boss of the floor from the guidebook, Fang, the Cobalt Lord, and his minion guards. They plan to do the raid the next day. As the two people left out, Kirito and Asuna form a party for the raid, and Asuna sees Mito joining another group.
Wow.
I know, cold,
The
right?
biggest anime betrayal. Leaving one's party for another. But it's gonna make another joke, I shouldn't.
Oh boy.
But it, again, you know, it's not exactly what you're expecting, and it's pretty good. And like the first part, you're not expecting because it wasn't in the anime, so most anime onlys are like, "Oh, wow, this is new and all interesting," and you know, it gets into the anime stuff that people have seen, and it gets a bit changed up a bit. You know, it's not the exact same, but it is pretty similar.
Mhm.
But it was still interesting. You know, it wasn't like boring and been like, "Oh, I've already seen this." You know, it felt fresh.
Yeah. And I think expanding on the boss meeting was the key. Like, that. This is what Diavel felt like he mattered the most, honestly. It's giving him more time to actually be part of this story.
Instead of being the way he's treated in the first episode. And
Yeah.
kind of.
He's there.
Like, oh, he's gone. Anyways.
Yeah. So that night, Asuna and Kirito share a meal, and Kirito lets Asuna use his bath. Both of these helping to change Asuna's point of view of Aincrad. They have a heart-to-heart in the field that explains both of their motivations and problems. The next day, Diavel rallies everyone to the cause and bolsters their spirits. Kirito and Asuna are assigned to keep the minions off of the main group as we head to the final fight.
This one, I like that funny scene of she gets the bath, and then she comes out, and Kirito is just chilling there, having his nice drink. Was it tea or was it water?
I think it was tea.
Yeah. And he's just chilling, and she comes out, and he's like, hey, and he's like, oh boy. You know, as any guy should be, because you're like, oh boy. And also, I want to try out that bun that they had, that they put that stuff on, you know.
Put the cream on.
They said it was, you know, dry at first. You put that on, it tastes good. I'm like, well, I like bread, so better taste good if I ever find a way to have it.
There you go. So now we reach the climax. Upon entering the boss room, Ilfang the Cobalt Lord is revealed and looks mighty terrifying. The boss fight is going well at first, as everyone is able to react to his abilities thanks to the guidebook. When Ilfang's final health bar reaches the red zone, the guidebook claims he will produce a Tolwar for the remainder of the fight. With that knowledge in hand, Diavel and his party rush in to finish him off before he can use a sword skill. That is when Ilfang draws a Nodachi and powers up a long-range stun skill. Kirito cries for Diavel to stop, but it is too late. Ilfang stuns the whole party and uses the 4-hit combo horizontal square to mortally wound Diavel. Kirito holds Diavel as he dies, telling him that it is up to him now. Mito starts attacking the minions to protect the stunned players, while Kirito goes to fight the boss. Asuna and Mito reunite, and Mito is forgiven. Asuna joins the fight against the Cobalt Lord with Kirito, who are then joined by Mito shortly afterwards, and Kirito delivers the final blow, killing the Cobalt Lord.
What a scene. Again.
It's a good scene.
Just dying like it was nothing. The man got bullied.
Yeah. So this is where I will rant about Diavel. In the source material, Diavel puts on this persona of this noble, charismatic knight, but in actuality, he is a minor antagonist. He is trying to undermine Kirito and weaken his equipment to stop him from getting the last attack bonus, which is why he and his party rush in to try and eliminate who could get the last attack bonus on the Cobalt Lord. What this did better than the anime is, in the anime, Diavel runs in alone, whereas in the book and in the movie, his whole party surrounds the Cobalt Lord, which makes more sense because in the actual book and in the movie, he only uses the stun skill when he's surrounded. So knowing that and then seeing Diavel run in and get stunned, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. But having him surrounded, that is what triggers him to use a stun skill. So it made more sense in that way. Diavel's death was pretty well done again. The A1 pictures, they just want to believe that Diavel is just a good guy, straight up.
Yep.
And I wouldn't call him evil in the actual source material, but he's a lot more interesting and more complex. He feels like a real person, which is kind of important.
Instead of this knight shining armor.
Yeah. And now for an even bigger complaint. Mito saves Kirito and Asuna from a blow from Ilfang that would have killed them. When in the book and in the anime, it is Agil who does that. It is Agil's shining moment, and they robbed him of it. It's literally the most important thing Agil does in Aincrad, and they gave it to someone else. That made me upset. Anything you wish to add, gentlemen, about the Ilfang fight?
It was a good fight, you know. Again, as I mentioned before, I was expecting a little bit more. But again, it was still a really good animated fight. You know, it's still up there as one of those good ones that people will remember. It could have been more? Definitely. It was an anime movie, so it could have had the bigger budget to go there. But it did. Is what it is. But, yeah, there's not a lot to complain about what happened other than, again, a guild. As well as how the heck was Asuna and Mito just kind of reuniting and all that. And you're like...
And Ilfang's just standing there while this is happening.
He's like, that's interesting. I'm glad you guys are friends again. Looks at Kirito, are you gonna attack me? No.
Okay, we're just gonna watch this play out. It's like Inigo Montoya and Wesley in Princess Bride, where it's just like, we'll wait until you're ready. Anything you wish to add about the boss fight there, Danny?
I like the build up.
Yeah.
And then when the doors creaked open and it was dark.
Yeah. It's a cool scene.
That was nice. But it ended a lot sooner than I was expecting. I thought there would be more.
Yeah.
The boss fight.
I can agree with that. It's kind of like the centerpiece of the whole story is the Ilfang fight. So as we get our final bit here, Kibo rages against Kirito, realizing he's a beta tester, and blames him for Diavel's death. Mito shirks back as a fellow tester, but being a terrible human being still, So Kirito steps up to draw the aggression away from the beta testers. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that Fang is surrounded by Cobalt minions who come billowing out of the walls. Kirito steps up to draw the aggression away from the beta testers, claiming to be much better than all of them, revealing that he was the only player who made it to the new floor at the end of the beta, saw at the beginning of the film. He takes the name Beater, beta tester and cheater, that's a very clever name, not, and goes off alone to open the door to the second floor. Mito asks Asuna to return and reunite their friendship, but Asuna's just like, no, beep, you left me to die, goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. She's polite for some reason and follows Kirito anyway. To his surprise, Asuna joins him out there, and the two remain a party and venture off into the second floor. This is observed by a blonde-haired girl watching from the shadows. So my final Sword Art Online rant for this podcast is the blonde-haired girl is named Argo. She's the information broker who put together the guidebook. She is supposed to be a main character in this story, and she is in one scene for about 2 seconds with one line. And Argo is a very popular character in the books. The anime mistreated her, now the movie has. I understand there's a lot of people upset at how Argo was treated in this film.
Yeah. It sucks what happens sometimes.
Yeah. Like, she has one scene in the anime, and her leading role in Aria the Starless Night is reduced to one scene and one line. And you know how you thought the bath scene was funny? It's even funnier in the book because while Austin is in there and Kirito is trying to be polite and wait, Argo bursts into the room and starts talking to Kirito about the boss. So Kirito forgets that Asuna is there. And I was like, I'm just going to use the restroom before I go. And Kirito's thinking about the boss. And then the door opens and he goes, wait! And the scream. And, like, it's funnier in the book. Anything you guys want to add about the plot before we get to our final segments?
It wasn't bad. Did Asuna go with Kirito in the anime, like at the end of the fight, or did he just kind of run off?
He went alone. Even in the book, he went alone. He meets up with Asuna on the second floor, but a few days later. Not she follows him. I guess they really...
Just that one event that everyone remembers from season 1 with Kirito and that party he joined. What floor was that?
So that's on floor 35. Not 35. That was wrong. 35 was Murder in the Safe Zone, but I know what you're talking about with the Sleeping Knights.
And they go into that dungeon and he doesn't do anything, he'll die.
Well, he does do stuff, but he should have tried to stop them, is the problem. Not the Sleeping Knights, man. For a self-proclaimed Sword Art Online expert, I'm screwing up. It's the Moonlit Black Cats. Just do a quick fact check here. I don't want to talk about it. Where did Kirito meet the Moonlit Black Cats? Let's find out.
Because in the anime, they didn't really emphasize any relationship between the two for a while.
Yeah. So this was around floor 27 that this occurred.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping, like, Reki Kawahara, the writer of Sword Art Online, his idea for progressive is great. To go floor by floor, how they beat each floor. But you gotta wonder, is he going to be around long enough to write all 75 floors? Because I know it's 100 floors, but they clear the game at floor 75. This is heavy spoiler territory, it's fine. That's a lot of writing left to do.
Oh, yeah.
So is he going to... So I think they're on floor 7 right now in the progressive story.
How long has it been going for?
So Progressive Volume 1 came out in 2012. Because he's writing the main series, the side series, the other side series, and Progressive, and just rotating which book is coming out. Like, he's doing 5 novels a year, which is awesome, but it's like, is he really going to get Progressive done? But I hope he at least gets to some of these floors and retells the events on them so we can see them from a different perspective. Like, I would love to see more depth on, like, the Moonlit Black Cats, or the Lisbeth story, or the Silica story, or something like that. More dealings with Laughing Coffin as well. And also, I want to see, the two things I want Progressive to cover is I want to see when Poe joins the game, because it's revealed in season 4 that he was not there on launch day. He found out about it and then chose to go in to kill people without repercussions. And I want to see when Heathcliff joined the game, because he couldn't have been there on day 1 because Kayaba was being the game master. So, and he becomes known as the most powerful player in the game. How? I want to see that. We know he's there by 435. In the book, he is part of the Murder in the Safe Zone story. He's not in the anime. So, wow, I want to know. I want to know that. So let's transition to our second final topic, our favorite scene and least favorite scene. Would you like to go first, Nick?
I think that my favorite scene was probably just a fight. That was like a good fight. I did kind of bash on it a bit, but I did enjoy it. It was still a fun and exciting fight. My least favorite was probably the way, like, it wasn't necessarily a part, but kind of the way they treated Asuna and what's her face, his friendship,
Mito.
Mito, Asuna and Mito's relationship after Mito left. Because I'm like, doesn't feel right.
Too easy.
Yeah, that was kind of the what I was. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. My favorite is the opening boss fight as well. Buff Fang, nostalgia, beautiful shots. Least favorite scene, harp on it again, when Mito steals Agil's hero moment and saves Kirito and Asuna. Agil needs his love too. He deserves better. Daniel?
The boss fight.
And your least favorite?
I don't really have one.
That's fair. And finally, our overall rating out of 100. I'll go first. I give it 85%. I did enjoy the film more than Eternals. So it has a higher rating than Eternals. It's the second lowest rating I've given thus far.
I go for Eternals.
You were somewhere in the 70s? I have it written down here. Actually, psych, I don't. I only have mine written down here. You were I think like 79 for Eternals, I think you said.
Like, for me, it's Sword Art isn't something that's like super exciting to me. I enjoy it just as like an anime to watch, but it's not something that I am like, oh, Sword Art, you know. I put it maybe around a 79, 80 there. Like, it was a good movie. I don't really have too many complaints about the movie. It was good, but it's not like, oh, you know, to me.
Daniel?
I am mute. Oh. 74.
74. And that is our Sword Art Online podcast, bringing it in at just about an hour. Slightly less once editing's done. So we thank you all for tuning in to this one. I hope you enjoyed. Next up will be Dune, with or without the people who really need to message me. With or without them, not next week, but next time will be Dune. That podcast will come billowing out to you 2 Thursdays from now, from when you're hearing this. If you enjoy the content, make sure to check out our other podcasts. We've done Eternals, Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man No Way Home. We got Dune coming up. We also got a couple other exciting ones coming up that'll be a joy as well. More Spider-Man content. I won't elaborate further, but more Spider-Man content.
We're almost turning into just Spider-Man.
I know. It's going to be like half the reviews are Spider-Man. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to check out the Gmod Squad YouTube channel. Link is on the podcast site. That is where you can catch us most of the time. Also, you can catch us on Twitch with VODs and live streams weekly. And yeah, for the Great Movie Ride, I've been Gaston.
I've been Jerryofdom.
Darnel.
And we'll see you in the movies. Good night, everybody.
Good night.